Hello, my name is Juan Meza.
My name is Oluwatobi Adisa.
My name is Chao Shen.
My name is Phil Johnson, and this is Racial Lab. All of us here today are students in the Dietrich Grand Challenge Freshman Seminar about racism, and for this project, we decided to tackle something that hits home for all of us: college admissions. Around last year, including us, millions of high schoolers were anxiously waiting to see whether or not they got into their top schools and dream schools. And for the past 20 years, acceptance rates for colleges have been plummeting. 20 years ago, it was rare or unheard of to have an acceptance rate over 20%, and now many of the top colleges are posting that number. And it has become, unfortunately, a perpetual cycle in which, as colleges get more selective, students start to apply to more colleges and start to really push themselves to beef up their resume, causing colleges to drive their admissions down further and causing a brutal cycle.
Mm-hmm.
High schoolers do things including sports, staying up all night for schoolwork, extracurricular clubs, volunteer work, and paying large sums of money for admission helps. However, despite all these factors and what kids do, there's one undeniably crucial factor for college admissions which no student can change with any amount of work: race.
This has been a very controversial topic, politically and socially, for it has been approaching a century in American history. An example would be the Mendez versus Westminster case, where Mexican schools were challenged due to the unjust race-based education systems in California. This meant that they were given menial work instead of important classes. Their quality of education was much less than their white counterparts or any other race in the U.S.
Yeah, and so piggybacking off of that, in more recent times, there have been court cases like Fisher v. University of Texas, where overall people, and especially college applicants, have felt that the process is unfair and that certain people, due to their race, have advantages over other people. And that just seems counterintuitive as to what, making schools more diverse to that goal, basically. And so the tensions between applicants and universities has been boiling up, and the result of all these events has shaped the application experience everyone in this room had to go through. And so, because of our personal connection to this topic, we really wanted to explore it. And so, our original goal was to retrieve admission information from Carnegie Mellon University to see how much of a factor race played. No surprise, we weren't able to get this kind of sensitive information, so instead we decided to focus on the next best thing: campus sentiment regarding affirmative action and what college students themselves thought about race and how it tied into college applications.
In order to understand Carnegie Mellon University students' perceptions on affirmative action and its role during the college application process, our group created a public survey titled Affirmative Action and CMU Admissions to obtain students' opinions and advices. In total, 51 CMU students were surveyed, including undergraduates, graduates, and PhD candidates. Of the participants, around 68% were Asian, 17% Caucasian, and 9% Hispanic, with the remaining 4% being African American. We distributed our survey primarily through 3 different means. First, we distributed it digitally through social media sites like Facebook, WeChat, and Twitter. And we also distributed our survey by setting up a table at the University Center at Carnegie Mellon University in an effort to reel in last-minute respondents. To attract these potential respondents, we offer free donuts to CMU students who are willing to complete the survey in person. Students were able to access and complete the survey either on our computers or by scanning the QR code on the flyers. And so the third method is to scanning the QR code on the flyers and complete the survey. And in total, we have around 9 questions, with 2 of them being optional. The required questions ask the respondents to describe their feelings and opinions on a 1 to 5 scale, whereas the optional questions were open-ended. And the 5 means that they felt the policies were very important, and 1 means that they don't care about the issue.
Yeah, so for our survey, it wasn't exactly perfect, and there were a few flaws with our methodology. For starters, we had 51 participants, which is by no means a bad number, but of course, we would have hoped for more people to participate in the survey. I don't know, maybe a number close to 100 would have been ideal. Additionally, of the people who did answer the survey, a very large amount of those people were Asian.
I really thought that was interesting when I saw that. I didn't expect it to be that high of a number.
Yeah, it was like, I believe it was like 60%, right, of respondents?
Yeah,
Yeah.
But give or take, yeah. That was a very large amount, which could play a role in what people thought about affirmative action. Additionally, we could have added more questions and made the survey longer. The reason why we didn't do that is because we felt that it would have turned some people off, because we were kind of catching people that were like, you know, coming from like some kind of event or like a club or something. But of course, we definitely could have gone more in depth with the survey.
Also, the fact that we only had one survey, because that was pretty much the only means of getting this data, right? We pretty much had like no other vehicle to.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So
We were kind of stuck with the survey, and
I mean, for one survey, I think it got a definitely got
decent
a
amount, yeah.
definitely
appropriate
it was
amount of
definitely
information.
a solid survey, and
Yeah.
it wasn't perfect.
If we're gonna
but-
continue, we definitely have to do more than the survey, or at least have a couple, or like have other vehicles to obtain this information.
Yeah.
Agreed. And of course, we could have added more choices, since some respondents did say that they didn't find their preferred choices. And finally, some improvements could have been spreading the survey on more platforms, like weekly major specific newsletters, to get in more respondents. And we could have started to do our tabling process earlier, which was pretty effective when we did it and reeled in a few people.
Maybe remain just because exclusively of the donuts, but you know, maybe.
Yeah, that was a
I'm
small
pretty sure
factor.
it was-
Yeah.
That was a small factor.
Yeah.
The donuts definitely reeled in a lot of people.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So after we collected the results of the survey, we saw some standard information and responses we expected, but then we also saw some pretty interesting trends.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
At least one interesting trend for me was how strongly people cared about the affirmative action policy. 41% of students really did care about it, and are actually very surprising, because I never really thought of CMU as a very political campus or very into that kind of.
That's a good point. Wait, what was the
Yeah.
number again? About
41.2%.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot bigger than what I would expect for
Yeah.
like CMU, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also when we looked at the later questions, that was contrasted with how many people actually thought it was fair, and even in the 4 and 5 range, it was only a total of 25.4%. So I think that was one indicator that a lot of people were not just okay with the status quo, and actually had some pretty significant qualms with the policy.
Yeah, that is definitely a really big point. The fact that only a quarter of the respondents gave a response ranging from 4 to 5, thinking that they thought affirmative action was fair. So basically, for the most part, most applicants thought the opposite, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we might not be, definitely not the most politically charged campus in the country, but, we are, as a institution, very well-read, educated, and thoughtful about our stances, so it's not completely surprising to me. It seems like a very important trend to observe.
Yeah, and one this really interesting question I thought was great was we were asking respondents about whether or not they thought affirmative action placed too much emphasis purely on race instead of other factors like socioeconomic status or like significant life experiences.
I think just like superficially, sometimes people just glob them into one category, right? They don't really take time to differentiate it and really think about the implications of what each factor alone actually entails and means.
Definitely, and I mean, in some way, it is kind of understandable because there's so many college applicants, but at the same time, it just isn't fair to anyone if you're just grouping up all these people by these categories, Yeah. And a majority of our respondents, 56.9% actually, thought that affirmative action placed too much emphasis purely on race and wasn't focusing on other really important factors that also plays a large role into each applicant's role.
We also got some pretty amusingly indifferent responses. One of the respondents actually just wrote, "Life is not fair, deal with it."
Yeah.
Which we
Definitely
that was
It's
pretty
an interesting way to look at life. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I don't think everyone would agree with that, but definitely a lot of little snide comments like that were also fun to read.
They were apparent. And of course, like, the people who responded with these, like, silly answers, who knows, like, they could have been half joking, or, like, I don't know.
Sure.
Also, a lot of the complaints I noticed, it was based specifically on Asian people. Like, I'm Asian, there are a lot of smart Asians, or some people wrote, "To me it's somewhat unfair since it is harder for Asians to get into good college."
You have to remember that it was like 56% or 68% of respondents were Asian.
Yeah, that's a pretty
So it's
big
like,
deal.
Perspective is a huge thing. Like,
Yeah,
where
most
you're
of our
coming
respondents
from.
were Asian, and because of that, we got lots of these comments about, like, you know, I'm Asian and it's not fair to me, you know, and that's very important to note.
I just want, you know, this whole trend of Asians having a slightly more difficult time getting admission into these elite colleges kind of mirrors a historical development that was actually present in the 30s and 40s with Jewish people, where I read in the top colleges like the Harvard, Yale, Princeton, when admissions was purely based on merit and tests, actually Jewish people started to really outperform their Anglo-Saxon counterparts and started, you know, gaining traction, gaining admittance. But then that's when those colleges started to introduce a holistic process where they didn't have to just evaluate purely quantitative and numerical measures, and they were actually kind of able to keep out the Jewish population that way.
That's really interesting, and also not that surprising considering just how racist America was, like, back in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, so it's just, you know, it's fascinating to see that kind of skeleton still present in society today, you know, even with our progressive measures and political endeavors to, you know, fix inequality.
No, definitely, yeah. It's definitely still present in today's society, and especially, like, for people who are Asian. I have many Asian friends who feel that, you know, they were at a disadvantage when they were applying to all these other really hard to get into colleges, and their friends who weren't Asian had a better chances.
Yeah, I actually know some Asian people who went so far as to actually say they weren't Asian, and because their name happened to not sound, not really didn't really give off a certain race, that they actually just said, you know, they would not prefer to share, or that even they were white.
Yeah.
Which kind of shows
insane.
like how much it like pushes people to actually what people do just for college admissions.
Yeah, no, college admissions, I mean, like, because if you think about it, like, it's such a very long, taxing, and really important process in, like, high school senior's life, you know, because the school you're going to be there for a few years.
It defines your future.
It definitely defines your future. The people you meet, you know, like, your future career.
Also, it's not just, you know, personal merit, right? It's a very social thing. Like, your parents tell all your other friends' parents, like, where you're going to go to college. You have to tell, you know, everyone in your social circle, and your whole group knows where you're going. And that kind of, you know, at least in the first stages of your life, it plays, admittedly, or probably what is a much more important emphasis on who you are as a person than it actually should. And as unfortunate as it is, it's a very apparent and prevalent aspect of life now.
Yeah.
Interesting. And on the topic, this relates very much to Fisher versus University of Texas, which last year saw its conclusion. And basically, for a background, the two plaintiffs, Abigail Fisher and Rachel Michaelwicz, I really hope I'm saying that right.
I think,
Yeah, they applied to UT Austin 2008, denied admission, and the two women, they're both white, they filed suit, basically claiming that the university was discriminating them on the basis of their race. And obviously that's a violation of the Equal Protection Clause and of the 14th Amendment. And when the lawsuit was filed, the UT Austin accepted students in the top 10% of each Texas high school's graduating class, regardless of their race. And with that plan, 81% of the freshman class was admitted. And yeah, so applicants like Fisher who weren't accepted felt that this was unfair, and this went to the Supreme Court, right?
I
Yeah.
think though when they actually kind of really looked into the case, right? Fisher wasn't passed over for a person of another race. Fisher was passed over for someone who's white.
Yeah, I believe you may be correct on this actually. This was a Supreme Court case that ended up finding the UT Austin basically clear of any like accusations that they were like being racist when it came to like their applicants and stuff. But like regardless of the outcome, it reignited this debate in America regarding high school students and college admissions and
Yeah, it's so
race.
contentious because a lot of this time it's not a clear black and white answer. It's a very weird, unfamiliar gray area that sometimes like there is no clear winner, there is no clear right answer.
Yeah,
for
I
the
know,
person.
especially because like with affirmative action, like it's not black and white because obviously like it's in everyone's interest to help those who are disadvantaged in life succeed. And how do you do that? By helping them get into really good colleges. But at the same time, it isn't fair to people who have worked really hard throughout their high school career and they were denied admission because there weren't any slots left.
Yeah.
Students themselves kind of know that race plays a pretty big deal when it comes to college admissions.
And especially because like the implications of race, right? Like behind history of each racial group throughout America, and that has like something that happened maybe 50 or even hundreds of years ago still has a huge disproportional effect on how those people are perceived today as society.
Institutional racism is still a huge thing, definitely.
Definitely.
And one thing that I kind of wanted to mention is that it's hard to find the balance between, because everyone's affected negatively by affirmative action in some way, even African Americans. That's because it, in a way, discredits. Discredits the efforts.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
I mean, like personally, like I remember last year, when my class heard that I got into CMU, there were some people that were like, "Oh, he only got in because he's Hispanic," or he only got in because of that or because of that, and it's really not fair to those who obviously their race definitely played a part in their application process,
Yeah,
but like that doesn't mean they didn't work hard at all.
Yeah.
Their race isn't what made them, study late in the nights or wake
Of
up
course,
early
of
in the morning
course,
to do
yeah.
activities.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I totally understand how, like, some minorities on campus may feel that, like, affirmative action is such a almost taboo topic because, like, once you bring it up, like, your peers will think that, oh, well, you're only in this school because of your skin color.
Yeah.
And obviously that's not the case. But
Yeah, it's a huge issue that, we can't keep quiet about that. We have to actually address and kind of tackle head on.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Talking about it is definitely the way to like kind of fix this problem, I think. I think that like if no one says anything and we just like leave it in the air and don't acknowledge it, it's just gonna make it worse.
Absolutely. Is it uncomfortable and awkward at first? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah, it is. Sometimes
hard to
people
talk
get
about.
really shy and weirded out about it, but it's absolutely necessary because, like the more you talk about it, the more power you have to control.
Yeah. Open discussion is extremely important.
Yeah, discussions are definitely the way to go, which is why we were hoping that like with this podcast we would like kind of open or bring up the conversation, so to speak, again, and more people would just like talk about it and be aware of it, because it's definitely a thing. I remember I saw a few posters like earlier in the semester. I think it was
it
like
on The Cut, I think?
It could be on The Cut. I saw one in like Doherty. I think it was like Spirit or some other.
Oh,
like,
I know. I think.
Yeah, there were these posters that were like, I didn't get in just because of my skin color, and like stuff like that. And that's
Actually,
something.
I think this is actually pretty interesting because now looking around, I think all of us are, at least considered in today's definitions like all different racial groups.
Yeah.
And like we've all had very different experiences with this process and also have like a very unique, different insight into this issue.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think that just goes to show that like affirmative action literally affects everyone, like in some way. And like, yeah, some groups are put at a disadvantage and other groups are advantaged, but like for the most part, like everyone is kind of hurt by this imperfect system. And when we asked our respondents whether or not, they felt that like affirmative action was fine just the way it is, most of them said that they'd rather see some kind of policy change or see something change.
I think
policy.
all of us on some level agree with that.
No, definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because there definitely should be some kind of thing to, kind of give a helping hand to like those people who are like in need and disadvantaged. But the current system we have is just flawed.
So actually, forgot to mention this, but one of the respondents had a truly insightful point that we just didn't mention for some reason, and they said any positive discrimination will result in negative discrimination against those not affirmed. I think that brings up a really thought-provoking idea that just because your actions or words might not necessarily be mean-spirited or be directly offensive, they can still isolate someone and ultimately be discriminatory in that matter.
Huh. Yeah, no, that's definitely something to keep in mind. I remember like we definitely in class too, we definitely talked about like racism, and it has its many forms because like, racism isn't always like the cliche like angry person like yelling at someone of color.
It's very core. It's it's isolating people. It's excluding people.
Yeah.
It's, letting people know like you are not a part of us. You are not in our group.
Essentially, just treating a group of people differently than you would with anyone else. That's basically what discrimination is, And like this could be positive or negative, and it's still discrimination.
Yeah, even in current pop cultural events, the movie Get Out exemplified this point brilliantly. They had the main character walk into a family that was predominantly white, and then all of their comments, were aimed to, kind of really over celebrate their culture in almost a really cringy,
it was
very cringy way.
The
father, was saying like, "Oh, I'd vote for Obama a third time if he was my favorite president."
Oh God, yeah.
It was isolating the main character.
Yeah.
Because when you don't treat someone just normally, like you would treat any other person, whether or not it's a mean comment or just a unnecessary compliment.
Yeah.
It just, it evokes feelings of separation, of isolation.
Definitely.
Oh, I'm different from these people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like they're like actively letting me know.
And actually, positive discrimination can also cause negative influence to those that are positive discriminated. Like, I have a white friend, and when he know that I am a Chinese, he says that you must be very good at math. And I was like, shit, I got 5 on IB math, and you're like humiliating me for being a Chinese and being so bad at math.
Yeah, no, stereotypes definitely, positive or negative, they're still racist, and the same thing kind of goes with affirmative action, like whether or not you're helping a group or, you're putting a group at a disadvantage, it's still like you're treating people differently than you would if,
based on external factors that
they can't control
over.
They really can't control you. Like, you're born, like that. Definitely unfair. Yeah, racism is just like, it's never black and white. Microaggressions, stereotypes. It's in many forms, and honestly, like you could make the argument that affirmative action is kind of racist in some ways.
It adds to the problem in a way.
Yeah, these feelings of racism, as subtle as they may be, is still woven into the fabric of our society.
Yeah, I think affirmative action had good intentions, but didn't end up working out as planned.
Yeah, I said before. It's definitely like a good thing. There are good intentions behind it. Like let's help out people that need help. But it ends up kind of doing more damage than good sometimes, and that's like an issue. Definitely good intentions. Not perfect. By a long shot. Definitely not perfect.
A lot of room for improvement.
And any.
I guess one other thing I could say is that, like, in terms of intentions, I could see that was meant as a way for like African Americans to catch up but at the same time, it never really factored that other races were also behind, maybe to like a different extent, but still just as disadvantaged as some other races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In my opinion, like I've had this conversation with like one of my roommates before about like race and how much like he was complaining that at one of these rallies he went like one of these rallies he saw on YouTube that a Chinese woman was being attacked for saying, "Oh, Chinese people matter too." This was a Black Lives Matter rally, and he was telling me that people can be racist. Black people can be racist to Chinese too, even though you'll say that they're lower on the ladder. It's still like it's still a matter of like power and stuff like that. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that affirmative action. The reason why it affects Black people the most is that they were put the farthest behind, but it shouldn't be only that. It should be that every race should be pushed forward and you should ignore, like, there's no real way to, like, ignore exactly what happened in the past, like, in the US at least. But at the same time, I still think that one way to move forward is to kind of relieve those things there and look more at where people are at now in terms of like socioeconomic status and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable way to like look at it.
Yeah. As a disclaimer, these opinions that we've shared today are our own. We're not looking to tell you what should be done about affirmative action. We're just trying to show you that it's good to have these kind of discussions so your own perspective can change in a way like mine has changed, and hopefully everyone else's perspectives have changed as well.
Yeah, we hope you learned something from this, and we definitely don't want to just say that everyone should believe in this because this is the right answer or this is the way to go. It's a very complicated, definitely not black and white subject to talk about, and yeah, we hope you take something away from this. I'm Juan Meza.
I'm Oluwatobi Adisa.
I'm Qiao Shen.
And I'm Phil Johnson.
And thank you for tuning in to Racial Lab. We hope you took something away from this. And tune in next week when we talk about why a certain coffee chain is in hot coffee. Thank you very much.